To better understand this next chapter of Frontier, I think it would be better to have a map to act as visual aid for where things are. That being the case, here's a map for reference. There's also a link to it in the description if you need to look at it while you're listening. Frontier, The Story of an Accursed Era, by Thunderhawk. Chapter 3, The Red Passion. Ugh! A bloody tooth flew out of Dave's mouth onto the floor. I said, Plesner pulled Dave's head up by his afro. Where'd you get the pills, motherfucker? Alone with Plesner in her office, the gang leader of the Boogie Boys, Disco Dave, sat tied to a chair, his face bruised and bloody from Plesner's violent interrogation. Dave coughed up a little blood. I may not be able to beat you bastards in a fight, but I ain't a damn rat, bitch. No matter how much you beat or torture me, I ain't saying nothing. Plesner reamed her fist into his gut. Ugh! He clenched his teeth in pain. I don't want to hear it from scum like you. Plesner spat on his face. You all act like you're noble and loyal or some shit, but also commit crime like it's second nature. Plesner sat down in her office chair. A dictator like you wouldn't understand, Dave replied. All you know how to do is what you've been told to do your whole life. I have loyalty to my boys because they're my family. You only care about enforcing your stupid laws. Plesner's mouth curled into a displeased snarl. Well, if you're so loyal, then I guess I'll have to torture all those other guys. They won't say a damn thing, Dave said. I'm sure of it. My boys wouldn't snitch like that. Oh, really? Plesner replied. Well, then it appears I have no use for you all. I guess I'll just have to execute all of you. That should be enough to scare whoever else you're working with away. What? You bitch! Dave became furious, struggling to get out of the ropes binding him to the chair. That is, of course, unless you tell me what I want to know, Plesner said. I'll let you and all your men off with prison time if you tell me where you got those pills from. Otherwise, you and all your men are dead. You fucking bitch! Dave clenched his teeth for a moment. Fine, I'll talk. But don't you lay a finger on my boys, you hear me? Of course, I'm glad to hear it. Plesner smiled and took out a bottle of beer from her desk. Meanwhile, in Charlie's lab, Carite, Jones, and Valentine were all swathed in bandages after their big fight last night. Jones and Carite were pretty much fine, but Valentine was on one of the tables. It would take a while to treat the hole burned through her shoulder. On the upside, Charlie was fine after accidentally being drugged yesterday. He was examining the sparkly gloves that were once on Dave. You said he was shooting lasers out of his fingers? Charlie asked. I swear on my life, he was shooting beams and flashing lights and shit, Jones replied. It was crazy. Charlie looked at the gloves again. I'm unsure, but I think I'm starting to figure out what's going on. Really? Carite asked. Well, first of all, these gloves just seem like normal gloves to me, Charlie began. And as you may remember, Jones, I said that from a chemical standpoint, I couldn't taste anything even remotely addictive in those red pills. Yeah? What of it? Well, what if this third party we haven't located yet has some way to imbue objects with properties that you cannot discern from their chemical makeup? Charlie said. What if this third party can somehow give objects sort of magical enchantments? Wait, you mean like my whip? Carite said. I mean, I know Quentin knew some weird stuff along those lines, but the thought hadn't crossed my mind that there might be someone else with enchanted objects like my whip. If that is the case, then this might be something bigger than just some chemist discovering a new concoction, Charlie continued. Quentin was always extremely secretive about the extent of what he knew. But if we get our hands on someone who can do whatever sort of magic this is, then we might get one step closer to being able to do it ourselves. Whoa. Carite sat, pondering that for a moment. As if on cue, the door swung open as Plesner came walking into the lab. Oh, good morning, Grand Marshal. Charlie did a little salute. Yes, good morning, she said. It appears the big question of our little drug scheme problem has been solved. Really? Karight said. What did he say? Well, Plesner took a seat. Apparently the Fortitude had a small breakout about a year ago. I thought that place was like a top-notch super prison or something. Jones took a puff of his cigar. And wouldn't we have heard about that by now? Yeah, well, it's evident that Warren Victor had a little slip-up and is trying to cover it up to protect his reputation. I'll make sure to make him pay for not telling anyone, but either way, from what the gang leader told me, he and 2 other people escaped a year ago and they've been working together ever since. 2 other people? Charlie asked. Yes, apparently their names were Charlotte Moonshine and Harrison Scruffler, Plesner said. Oh, what did you just say? Jones suddenly got up out of his chair, his face filled with sudden concern. That's right, Plesner said. It appears your father has something to do with this, Jones. Father? Karight was extremely confused. Jones, you... what? 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 Jones said. You never told me you had a dad, Karight stated loudly. Look, I didn't feel like talking about it, okay? Jones replied. Am I not allowed to keep some privacy? I mean, I just... You 2 can talk about it later, Plesner said. The point is, we know who's behind this whole drug scheme. Who's this Charlotte person? Charlie asked. Do you think they might be the one making the pills? No, Charlotte Moonshine used to be a hired assassin in Grayland Munns, Plesner replied. If anything, she's probably acting as the muscle of their group. Unless Harrison suddenly learned how to make magic pills in prison, I think it's safe to assume there's someone else we don't know about yet. Makes sense, Jones said. My old man always was a man obsessed with money. If he found someone who can make these pills after getting out of prison, there's no doubt in my mind that his first thought would be about how he can make bank off of them. That would also explain why these pills have only been shown up recently and not a year ago when they got out. That's not all, Plesner said. That gang leader also told me where they are. And where's that? Charlie asked. Apparently they've set up shop in Mirror Bet, Plesner answered. The Boogie Boys already had money and influence in the area. So Harrison probably called them up for support in dealing the pills. At this point though, he might be ready to hire his own dealers. If that's the case, then taking out the Boogie Boys isn't going to change anything. I'm going to call up the mayor of Mirror Bet and tell him about the situation. That should be the last we hear about this whole ordeal. Wait, Jones said. Go ahead and call the mayor, but I want to head up there too. I'm going to see to it that my old man is sent back to prison myself. It's not your place to decide, Officer Jones, Plesner said. With Officer Valentine injured, we're already going to be short one special operative for a while. I can't have you going off on your own for who knows how long for something the Mirror Bet police force can handle themselves. I can fight. Valentine suddenly tried to sit up, but it was too much for her and she ended up clutching her shoulder in pain. Don't push yourself. Charlie went over to her. You've done enough already. Right now, you just need to recover. Look, I know my dad, Jones said. He knows how to get out of tight situations easily. That's why he managed to evade the law for so long until Quentin arrested him. Not to mention with this other person who can make magic pills and laser gloves or whatever. Who knows what he's working with? I need to be over there myself. I'll make sure he doesn't get away with it. I think Officer Jones might actually be right, Charlie said. If we're the ones to catch Harrison and his crew, then Jones can probably bring back the person who knows how to do all that magic enchantment stuff to Redwick with him. Magic enchantment stuff? Plesner asked. Yes, it's likely that the person making these pills knows how to use whatever technique Quentin used to make Karite's whip, Charlie said. They're probably also the one who made Dave's gloves. If that's the case, it would be better if we capture them ourselves, as we'll be the ones who can get the information on how to do that out of them, and not those up in Grayling Munns. Magic enchantment technique, huh? Plesner grew a big smile on her face. You know, I would rather have that for Redwick than let those, grubby members of the Frost family get their hands on it. Does that mean I can go? Jones asked. Sure, Plesner said. Officer Karite, you go with Officer Jones to Mirror Bet and take care of our red pill situation. Make sure you bring back whoever's making the pills to Redwick with you. Oh, okay, Correct said. Where did not wanting to be short on special operatives go, though? Yes, I recognize there will be a period where Charlie will be the only special operative in town. That being said, I don't want you two to be in Mirabet for more than 3 days. The airship travel will already be 6 days for you to go there and come back, and I don't think we can stretch our luck forever. I'd rather let the Frost family get their hands on whoever this magic guy is than have something horrible happen over here while you two are out. Of course, Correct said. Now then, Plesner said. Officer Jones, Officer Correct, do you have any questions? No, sir, Correct proclaimed. Nah, Jones took a puff of his cigar. I'll make sure my old man doesn't get away with what he's doing. Good, Plesner replied. Then you two get ready to leave for Mirabet. We have a cargo ship set to leave for Mirabet in about 5 hours anyway. You two can go with it. Yes, sir, Correct replied. With that, the order was set, and the two headed out, packing their bags for a 9-day trip. Correct and Jones both convened at the air dock on the cliff looming over Redwick. Up there, they had a perfect view of the city, as well as the hot air balloons floating around in the sky. Up on the dock, a few airships were docked, including the cargo ship that would carry them to Mirabet. It was crafted from a dark wood with a big white balloon hoisted above to carry it through the sky. The two were standing before the ramp to board the ship with their bags. Do we really have to go by airship? Correct was saying. Well, yeah, it's much faster than taking a jolly, Jones replied. Correct seemed a bit squeamish. Don't tell me you're still afraid of flying, Jones said. Shut up, Correct got defensive. You're the weird one for not being scared of flying thousands of feet in the air. Heh, whatever. Jones took a puff of his cigar and began going up the ramp. Damn it, Correct muttered to herself and followed closely behind him. As they stepped aboard, the airship captain was there to greet them. Officer Jones, Officer Correct, he said. Your cabins are ready for you. We'll be launching in about 10 minutes. Okay, Correct said. One of the crew members led them to their cabins where they put down their bags and got ready for a long trip to Mirabet. Hey, Correct, do you think I have enough cigars? Jones said, opening his bag up for her to look inside. She looked in to see almost nothing but boxes of cigars. Jones, what the heck? Correct blurted out. Yeah, I was thinking I should have packed a second bag of them. Jones took another puff of his cigar. You have nothing but cigars, Correct said. And? Jones replied. Correct put her hand to her face. Dear heavens, what am I gonna do with you? A what? Jones, in his confusion, took another puff of his cigar. Suddenly, they felt the boat begin to rumble. We're lifting off! They could hear a crew member yell from out on the deck. They could feel the weight of the ship being lifted off the ground as the engines whirred faintly outside. Correct could suddenly feel her heart racing. Oh, shit. Correct clutched her chest and whispered to herself. If I just stay inside, it'll be over quickly. I don't need to go outside. Everything will be fine. Everything will be fine. Oh yeah, now we're taking off, Jones said. I'm gonna go sit on the side railing. You're gonna do what? Jones' words finally registered for Correct as he was already out the door of their cabin. She chased after him. There were a few cabins and halls. She eventually came to the door to the outside deck. As she opened the door, a suddenly cool wind hit her face as the smell of engines and vapor filled her nose. Along with the other crew members, she could see Jones standing out there. He went up to the side railing and leaned against it. Correct could feel her legs becoming wobbly as she could see nothing but sky off the side of the deck. Jones, get back here, she cried out. What? I can't hear you, Jones called back before climbing up on the railing. Oh my. Correct could almost faint at the sight of Jones planting his butt on the side railing of the deck. The wind feels nice, Jones called over. Correct, you should come over here. Correct was nearly paralyzed from fear. Come on, he said. There's nothing to be afraid of. Correct began to move. She slowly went inch by inch across the deck of the ship before finally coming to the railing next to Jones. She took a single glance down at the ground and saw how small Redwick looked from up there. Oh gods. Crate could feel herself getting lightheaded, and she stumbled back from dizziness. She clutched her head, feeling the sweat beating up on her skin from absolute anxiety. What is something? Ah! Jones suddenly slipped off the side railing, plummeting down off the ship. Jolted back into reality, Krait's eyes suddenly shot back down off the railing. Oh fuck! Jones! She screamed. Jeez. Jones, now falling thousands of feet in the air, took a puff of his cigar and blew forth a massive jet of smoke, propelling himself back upwards onto the boat. Jones looked at Krait with a cocky smile. Hey, did you see that cool trick I just did? Krait slapped him across the face. You piece of shit! I thought you were dead! Jeez. Jones rubbed his now sore cheek. Krait grabbed him by the ear. Hey! Ow! Ow! Krait pulled him back towards the cabins. You're staying inside now, Krait said, dragging him with her. Jeez, fine, Jones replied. The rest of their trip went pretty smoothly. There wasn't any issue with the ship, and Jones didn't accidentally fall off the side again. After 3 days of travel, they finally arrived at the lakeside city of Mirbet. The sky was a deep gray. As the airship began to lower, the swampy city became more and more clear. The airship dock was mounted on the tallest building in town. There were only 1 or 2 other ships docked there, as the cargo ship Krait and Jones were on landed, docking as well. As the ramp to get off the ship was lowered, Krait immediately went down and off the airship. Oh, thank the heavens, she said to herself. It's finally over. Jones came walking down behind her, puffing a cigar. I take it you two are Fur Coat Jones and the Black Mamba? A big man in a military-like uniform came up to them. He had an immense beard, and he was strapped to the teeth with weapons of all kinds. They were blades, revolvers, grenades, almost anything stored on his body one way or another. What was most important, however, was the big shiny badge on his chest that read, Sheriff Redfield. Oh, at your service, Krait gave a salute. Jones blew forth a little smoke. Sup. The name's Sheriff Redfield. He went to shake their hands, but you can just call me Sheriff. It's an honor. Krait shook his hand. Oh, the honor's all mine, he replied. To have 2 legendary guys like you come and help us with this drug issue we've been having will be such a big help. Aw, it's no big deal. Krait blushed from the flattery. So we getting straight down to business or what? Jones puffed some more smoke. Of course. Follow me, we'll head over to the police station, Redfield said before escorting them down off the tower and through the streets of Mirbet. As they walked down the sidewalk, they could see jollies driving through the streets. Along the sidewalks, there were vendors left and right. Hot dogs, hamburgers, cola, cotton candy. There was almost anything you could dream of there. They could see the citizens passing by, adorned in their sophisticated fashion, with their suits and vests and short frilly dresses. It was like they were practically taunting Jones and Krait with their sophistication. The two got a few weird looks. They all knew Sheriff Redfield, but to them, Krait looked like a lost farm girl, and Jones looked like a young hobo. Krait could feel the pressure around her. It made her feel a bit insecure. Jones didn't care at all and went about smoking his cigar. Eventually, they came to the police station. As they came inside, Krait began to cough. It's so smoky in here, she said. Indeed, all the police officers inside were on break and smoking up a storm. Many were having lunch or playing a game of cards to pass the time. Now this is my kind of joint, Jones puffed his own cigar. Come on, let's get to my office, Redfield said. He brought them back to his office at the back of the station where they sat down with him. It was considerably less smoky in there. Alright, let's get down to business. Redfield pulled out a file. Here's what we know. He began flipping through the folder. We started finding these little red pills a few weeks back after an incident where a businessman got high as shit and crashed a wedding. Sources suggest that they've been going around for at least a month or 2 at this point. Even with the information Plesner gave us a few days ago, we've been having a bit of trouble. A few of our guys have been attacked in the middle of the night while on patrol. They began following a suspicious figure before being knocked out. From what they saw, they could tell that she was a tall woman with black hair, a blue left eye, a green right eye, and a beauty mark over the right side of her lips. which just so happens to be the exact appearance of the former convict, Charlotte Moonshine, who we've recently found to be related to the case. Additionally, each incident occurred on a Sunday, and each time she was carrying a duffel bag with her. "Today's Sunday, isn't it?" Crichton said. "Pretty sure," Jones replied. Crichton turned to Redfield. "So you think we have a chance of catching her tonight?" "I think it's certainly possible. What's most confusing, however, is what we think she's had in that bag of hers." "What's that?" Crichton asked. "Each Monday morning, we wake up to discover that there have been a series of new robberies. What's strange, though, is that nothing of real value was stolen. Only sentimental things like family photos, love letters, and childhood toys. We have no idea what it could mean, but we think that this Moonshine girl might be responsible for it. I don't know if it's related to the case or not, but if it is, then I'm honestly stumped." That is weird," Crichton replied. "Maybe the person isn't Moonshine," Jones said. "Maybe they're just a hoarder with a weird fetish or something." "Maybe," Redfield said. "But it would be one hell of a coincidence if both Charlotte Moonshine and a completely unrelated other criminal have the same appearance." "That's true," Jones said. "For tonight, I want you to help us search for this mysterious woman, and if it doesn't yield anything, we can discuss further ideas," Redfield said. "Sounds good," Crichton said. "You two can stay here for now," he replied. "You'll want to get some rest before patrolling all night." "Right," Crichton said. The two took up a couch in the lounge. It was very smoky at first, but Crichton managed to make them take their smoking outside. The exception being Jones, of course. Soon the sky became darker, as the night came and the clouds became full. Before the sun was fully down, it began to drizzle. By the time it was fully night, it had become a full torrent of rain. The clouds began to thunder as the occasional bolt of lightning cracked through the sky. The damp smell of precipitation wafted through the entire police station. It'd come time for Jones and Crichton to go out on patrol. They were both getting umbrellas ready. Jones was looking outside. "I hope you don't mind getting wet tonight." "Yeah, I can't remember the last time we had rain like this in Redwick." "It's not what I mean." Jones took a puff of his cigar. "What?" "What?" Jones opened his umbrella and went straight out the front door. Crichton smirked a bit, amused, before heading out as well. They decided to split up for the night to cover more ground, so they ended up going separate ways. What they weren't ready for, though, was that one of them wasn't going to be back at the station later that night. It'd been about an hour at this point. Jones was walking down a barren street as the black sky cried down on the city. His umbrella kept him mostly dry, but the occasional speck of water would somehow find its way onto him. He watched as the puddles rippled with each step he took. He took a satisfying enjoyment in it. He hadn't seen this much rain in a while. Even so, he made sure to stay mostly alert, keeping an eye out for suspicious figures. As he did, he heard a faint rustling through the powerful rain. It was coming from a nearby alleyway. He quickly went to go investigate. As he turned the corner, he saw something duck into a side street. With that, he also saw an open window on a nearby building, as if whatever it was just came out through that window. Jones dropped his umbrella and ran after them. As he came into the side street, he saw a hooded figure carrying a duffel bag. "Stop and put your hands up!" He pointed his revolver. The figure quickly dashed into another alleyway. Jones ran after them. As he turned the corner again, he saw the figure in front of him. He had a clear shot. "This is your final warning. Stop or I'll shoot." Without stopping, the figure turned and threw something at him. He could see a small throwing dart whiz by him. With that, he could also see the gleam of one blue eye and one green eye beneath her hood. Why'd she throw a dart, though? "Fine, then." Jones pointed the barrel of his revolver forward and pulled back the hammer. The figure quickly retaliated by jumping up, bouncing off the wall of a building, and jumping up on the roof of another. Geez, an acrobat." Jones quickly lit a cigar, though it wouldn't last long in the rain. He took a puff of smoke and blew himself upward onto the roof of the hooded figure. As Jones landed, he suddenly felt a shoe glide into his face. He stumbled back, just barely catching his balance. The figure went in for another swing. Jones ducked forward, rolling behind her. He pointed his revolver. Before he knew it, her knee had already collided with his face. His gun fell out of his hand as he went back even further. His nose began to drip with blood, but he didn't have a moment to lose. He He jumped forward to grab his gun. As he did, he felt the impact of a drop kick slam into his side, crashing his body down against the roof. The figure flipped back, easily getting back on her feet. Jones watched as she picked up the revolver. "Shit!" Her green and blue eyes gazed at him for a moment before tossing the gun off the side of the roof. "So that's how it is, huh?" Jones slowly stood up, wiping the blood from his nose. The figure pulled the hoodie over her head and threw it down, revealing her full appearance. She had straight-cut black hair with a beauty mark over her lip. Under the hoodie, she had just a sports bra, letting Jones see that her body was built better than that of an athlete. An intricate tattoo of a phoenix spread across her well-sculpted back muscles from shoulder to shoulder. Before him stood the assassin, Charlotte Moonshine. With a look of unwavering determination in her eyes, she put up her fist to fight. "You just want a good old-fashioned fight, huh?" Jones, with a big golden grin, took off his fur coat and put up his fist to fight as well. He didn't have his gun and he'd have to light a new cigar each time he wanted to use his smoke. He was at a clear disadvantage. The two stared each other down as the rain continued to pour, gleaming the moon's light across the air. For a moment, neither of them moved, waiting for each other to attack. Suddenly, Jones noticed a slight glint as Charlotte revealed that in her right hand she had a throwing dart. With blinding speed, she shot the dart at him. He narrowly dodged, only to notice Charlotte coming at him, mid-lunge. He threw a punch, hitting her square in the face. She recoiled, just barely catching her feet. Jones came in to hit her again. This time, she was ready for it, and dodged quickly to the side. She used this as an opportunity to make her own attack, going to deliver a powerful jab to his throat. Jones pulled up his other arm, blocking the strike. Charlotte persisted, coming again immediately with a swift kick to his groin. "Shit!" He kneeled over in pain as she grabbed him by the head and belted a punch across his face. A spatter of blood flew out of his mouth as he dropped to the roof again, spewing an inundation of swear words under his breath. Charlotte came before him, gazing down at him with a cold, disdainful glare. She procured another dart from her belt and prepared to put it into Jones. Fighting through the pain, Jones acted fast, using the rain to his advantage. He quickly scooped up some water and splashed it into her eyes, blinding her for a short moment. As he hopped up, she retaliated by throwing a punch. He dodged it easily before coming in with his own, drilling his fist into her stomach. He grabbed her by the hair, punching her in the face over and over. With each collision, her face became more bruised and bloodied. She tried to fight back, but the rush of pain to her face was too overwhelming. She just couldn't react. With one final punch, knocking some blood out of her, Jones gave her a good knee to the stomach for safekeeping. She began stumbling back in a dazed stupor from all the sudden agony she found herself in. Jones came up to her and grabbed her by the throat, lifting her up off the ground. "You put up a good fight, I'll give you that," Jones said triumphantly. "But it looks like the winner is..." He suddenly felt a prick in the arm he was holding her up with. He looked over to see a throwing dart stuck in his forearm. The last thing he saw was a smirk on her face, before he felt his entire body go numb. He quickly blacked out, as the dart was coated in a fast-acting sleeping poison. With just a single prick, he collapsed, knocked out cold. Eventually, Jones came to. His eyes slowly fluttered open as his blurry vision became more and more clear. He came to his senses. The first thing he noticed was that he was in some sort of basement. He was on the ground, hands behind his back, chained to a metal pipe that ran from the ceiling to the floor. He could feel a strip of duct tape over his mouth. What was most peculiar, however, was that he felt fine. He didn't feel sore or bruised at all from the fight he had, though he could still hear the sound of rain falling outside. The fight could have been only a few hours ago, but he felt perfectly fine. As he began to examine the room, he noticed that there were two other people in there with him. First, he saw Charlotte Moonshine, sitting in a metal chair reading a book while sipping a cup of tea. As he looked at her, he noticed that she didn't look injured at all. All the bruises on her face and wounds he gave her were gone. Maybe their fight didn't happen recently? Was he out for a couple days? He'd think about that later. Right now, he needed to focus. He looked at the other person in the room. He noticed that the figure was a small, adolescent boy with jet black hair, accompanied by a set of large ram horns. He had a soft, slightly effeminate complexion and a poofy black sweater that was much too big for him. There was an innocent yet somewhat mature look about him, as if he'd seen more than a normal kid his age. He was on the floor, rifling through the duffel bag Charlotte had before, and pulling out things like framed portraits and teddy bears. As Jones was looking at him, the boy noticed Jones's gaze. "Ah!" Charlotte looked up from her book and noticed that Jones was awake. She put down her tea and closed her book, walking over to a set of stairs leading up out of the basement. She whistled loudly up the stairs. A voice Jones knew all too well responded. "Oh, is he awake?" Jones's face curled with hatred as he heard footsteps from the stairwell. In a white, somewhat over-the-top suit, Jones's father, Harrison Scruffler, came before him. He was on the older side, his face telling a story of age. His sleeves were rolled up and he had a shiny, jeweled ring on each and every finger. He came up to Jones and squatted down, looking him in the eyes with a big smile that showed off a single, gold tooth. "Jones, my boy," he said, "how you been?" Jones replied with a look of contempt. "Oh, come on, I haven't seen you in forever. Can't you look a little more happy?" He let out a grunt. "Oh, right, the tape." Harrison ripped the duct tape away from Jones's mouth. Jones took a moment to bear the stinging pain on his face. He looked up at Harrison. "Go to hell!" "Is that really how you speak to your old man?" Harrison replied. "I was certain that four-eyed bastard would brainwash you." "Shut up," Jones said. "You know, if you were any other police officer, I'd have shot you between the eyes by now," Harrison said. "But you're my son, Jones. You think I want to hurt you? I don't." "And yet here I am, tied up in a basement," Jones said, "because of you." "Well, I can't have you interfering in my business," Harrison replied. "Besides, this gives me a chance to bring things back to the way things were. Remember that time you helped me sneak into some rich prick's mansion and steal his trophy collection? Remember that time we scammed some poser out of $1,000,000 because he thought you were a homeless orphan? Remember how no matter how tough things got, no matter how impossible success seemed, we still had each other's backs? You told me you wanted to be just like me when you grow up. What happened to that, Jones?" "I grew up," Jones replied. "You grew up? You grew up?" Harrison was getting a bit angry. "You may not be a kid anymore, Jones, but you don't know a damn thing. You really think that serving some dictator like a sheep is better than being your own man? You think obedience is better than independence? You really have been brainwashed." "I'm never gonna help you again, Dad," Jones said. "I don't care if you help me. I only care that you're your own person who does what he wants rather than being some goody two-shoes bitch like that winged shitbag," Harrison retorted. "And you're not coming out of this basement until that happens." "Fuck you," Jones replied. Harrison sighed. I guess it'll take some time." He reapplied the duct tape over Jones's mouth. "Again, you don't need to work with me." Harrison stood up. "But I won't let you be a dog like all those other bitches in the police. You can leave once you decide to actually listen to reason." Well, anyway." Harrison walked over to the kid going through the duffel bag. "You think that'll be enough to make another full batch?" "I think so," he responded. Harrison smirked. "All right, keep up the good work." He patted him on the head before looking over at Charlotte. "Our dealers may have been taken out a few days ago," Harrison said, "but even so, our red passion pills sold like hotcakes earlier this week. Once I get this meeting settled with Mrs. Chavant tomorrow, I think we'll really be hitting business. That being said, I'll double your pay for this week. You've been doing great." Charlotte smiled slightly before going back to her book. Harrison began walking back upstairs. "And make sure Jones doesn't try to escape. I gotta go have a smoke." Whew, my voice is tired from all those gravelly voices, but you know, if you liked it, if you liked Chapter 3 of Frontier, then make sure to leave a like maybe, subscribe for more epic content. Chapter 4 will be coming out in 2 weeks. So, be there. It'll be epic. Subscribe.